Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. On today's show, we're going to be discussing some of the highlights through mandatory minicamp, in case you missed it. We're going to be discussing a lot of news. There's not a ton of news to talk about. It's mostly speculation. Some news, but not a lot. Obviously, we're getting into the super dead period of football where everybody's got time off. It's summertime. We're not going to really see football till training camp, so we're going to have pretty much a big old dead period. The finals are almost over in the NBA. Sports is just going out the window. So let's start with this first news story because it's so stupid that I just want to get it out of the way really fast. Dolphins wide receiver Preston Williams spotted working out with Brandon Marshall. This comes from the Finsider. Who cares? That's cool that he's working out with Brandon Marshall, but who cares? It's not really newsworthy. But this is the place we're at. We got some good news stories here, though. This is when stuff starts getting real good. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Brian Flores, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. Brian Flores encouraged by Charles Harris's offseason performance. Dolphins 2017 first-rounder Charles Harris finds himself at the top of the team's edge rusher depth chart despite his disappointing performance over the first 2 years in the league. But Cameron Wolf of ESPN.com writes, new head coach Brian Flores is encouraged by what he has seen thus far this offseason. Harris has spent more time upright as an outside linebacker instead of with his hand in the dirt as a traditional 4-3 defensive end. And that may suit his strengths better. Flores said, quote, I can't say enough good things about Charles Harris. Honestly, I don't care about his past. I don't care about right now. He's smart. He says I care about right now. I can't say enough good things. Honestly, I don't care about the past. I care about right now. He's smart. He's hardworking. He's got a lot of ability. So, yeah, there you go. That's what Brian Flores' impressions of Charles Harris's have been thus far. Granted, pads have not been put on yet. And this is a defensive lineman we're talking about. Really, for every position on the field, you're really throwing on air as a quarterback. There's no real threat. It's a completely different animal when you've got people flying at you. That's why preseason and in training camp is going to be so important for the quarterbacks, and especially preseason, because there's nothing like real game competition. Because you always know in the back of your head, this is practice, this isn't real. You play a lot more free and loose. That's why, you hear about bad quarterbacks all the time who are really physically gifted, have great springs, right? And early summers, because they're just throwing on air. They don't even have to think. They're just using their God-given ability. They're not diagnosing anything really. Everything is super vanilla. The defenses are running the scheme that obviously they're trying to get better too. But it's not the same as a game, or even a preseason game. It's not the same. If you've ever seen a training camp or it's completely different. If you just watch highlights on your team stream, you can tell it's completely different. They're just two different animals. Just the mindset is completely different. Everything is. So it's going to be interesting to see what he thinks of Charles Harris when he's got pads on and when we're going into the season, because it is completely different. And even when Charles Harris was a stand-up outside linebacker, he was terrible at Mizzou against the run. He couldn't set the edge. All of us thought he would get better at that, but he never did. We'll see what happens with Charles Harris. I'm not super optimistic about the whole situation, but he really is Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope when you look at the roster, because he has the best pass rush ability out of anybody on the roster currently on the edge. Like, he has the potential to be a very, very, very good outside rusher. As my wiener dog is clanking his feet on the ground, I apologize for that. But he has the most potential out of anybody on the roster. That's the one thing. And he doesn't have to be a 3-down guy, man. But we need from somewhere to get a consistent pass rush and someone to be dominant when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. And if he can do that, the thing that he needs to get better at is just being on the field all 3 downs. And it's not even pass rush, even though he hasn't really proven that yet. But we know he has that. That's the strength of his game coming out of college. What he needs to build upon is just being a defensive, an outside lineman. He needs to be a better all-around player. He's so one-dimensional. He came into the league one-dimensional. He hasn't shown his pass rush ability yet in the NFL. He can't finish at the quarterback. He has so many things he needs to work on, and hopefully it all clicks in his third season. It does for a lot of players. But this, to me, this news doesn't mean anything. Nothing really doesn't mean anything until everybody's got pads on. Until we hit a scrimmage, until we see preseason, until we see live competition at the highest level with pads. I just don't take I take all of this with a grain of salt, and I really don't put too much stock into it. But we'll see we'll see. I mean, we've heard this before. Keep in mind with Charles Harris. I feel like we talk about this every week, but it's true. I mean, last offseason, I think it was the year he was drafted, Jason Taylor said he was going to be a Pro Bowler. This is all based off of spring. Everybody talks about how hard of a work he is, how dedicated he is. Another thing he's struggled with is to stay healthy. So there's a lot of question marks with him that he has to just overcome and prove that he can do. But until we see that, I really don't have a ton of faith that it's going to get done. I'm not going to have the wool pull over my eyes for, the third year or going into his third season, because the last 2 years, I've thought the same thing, and I've heard this, and you continue to hear the same things, and it's the same old story, same old song, very similar to Devontae Parker. So again, this is definitely a wait and see type of a situation. This next news story this is a very interesting one. This also comes from Pro Football Rumors. Brian Flores making strong first impression. Dolphins to wait and see approach with the 2020 free agents. Brian Flores is making a strong first impression with the Dolphins, as Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald writes. A number of players are less than keen on the old school mentality and the demanding nature of the new coaching staff, but others are enjoying it. And Flores himself has drawn rave reviews. Players have lauded that rookie head coach both publicly and privately, which is a bit more meaningful for Flores. So they're gushing about him publicly and privately. For Flores, a bit more meaningful for Flores than it might be for another head coach. The Dolphins are in full rebuild mode, so Flores will be judged not necessarily on wins and losses, at least for a year or two, but on how his players respond to him and compete for him. The same piece linked okay, here we go. Okay, I don't really know how that relates to 2020 free agents. I have no idea how that crap relates. I don't mean to say that word. I hate that word. But I don't know. I don't understand the free agent angle on that. But Brian Flores, I think this really happens with all coaches when they get into a new organization, that some players love it, some players hate it. But everything that I've heard, like they're saying, it's overwhelmingly rave reviews for Brian. So that's obviously great news. You heard Laremy Tunsil come out and say how the team is responding to him, which is great. It's just really good to hear this from the players, and the fact that the building, obviously not everybody's going to like you. And the fact that the thing that they don't like about him is because, let me get the exact. A number of players are less than keen on the old school mentality and the demanding nature of the new coaching staff, but others are enjoying it. And Flores himself has drawn rave reviews. I feel like if the fans had to look at the roster and to pick who's loving it, it would be so easy to do it. Because if you do keep up with the team a lot, you can tell who really wants to win in this organization. Laremy, Kenny, Kenyon, on defense, Minka, Xavier, Rashad, despite his prima donna tendencies, TJ McDonald. I feel like there's a lot of players. Maybe Rashad isn't too happy about the old school mentality. I could see him not enjoying it, but I feel like you could definitely pick who is in and who is out on this roster. But hopefully by the end of the season, by the start of the season, everybody's on the same page. But I love it, dude. We have a great coaching staff. I love that they're demanding a lot from their players. This isn't fun, let's grab an ice cream. We're trying to win games. The attention to detail is everything. And if the old school mentality is just because they're working hard. If that's what they, I mean, I think that's a great sign and a culture change. So I'm very, very happy about that. And I think all impressions for Brian Flores so far as the leader of the organization has been great. I think the fans are responding to him in a very positive way. I feel like the players are responding to him in a very positive way. I think, everybody loves Brian so far. And I think everybody loves the coaching staff that's around him. And I think from that aspect of the organization, I think the entire fan base is completely behind it. Unlike definitely the last two regimes, I mean, no one liked Joe Philbin. It was 50-50 with Adam Gase, and I feel like everybody, for the first time in a while, is really... But now we haven't played any games yet, so that's probably going to change. But... I shouldn't say probably going to change. Because I feel like I think he has everything that he needs to be successful. And then add on to the positive things that are coming out of the organization in terms of players, responding to him. It's all pointing in the right direction, and it gets me very, very, very excited. Because I feel like, this coaching staff has so much success. They've earned a lot of success. They have so much experience. They know what it takes to win. They've been around winning organizations. They've developed players that have become Pro Bowlers and All-Pros, every single one of them. Again, they've been a part of a winning culture for so long that it is awesome. And there's more than one. It's just not just one. It's literally the entire coaching staff. All of them have been a part and developed and have had great personal accolades, not just as a team, but developing their positional groups. As a positional head coach, they've been really, really good at it. So all of that, it gets me very, very excited. This next news story also comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins interested in extending Laremy Tunsil. The Dolphins have exercised left tackle Laremy Tunsil's fifth-year option in April, which keeps the 2016 first-rounder under club control through 2020. However, Miami is apparently interested in working out an extension that would run beyond 2020. Again, to repeat that, Miami is apparently interested in extending Laremy Tunsil beyond 2020. Now that Tunsil has 3 years of service time, he is eligible for an extension, and Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald writes that the Fins would like to explore negotiations on a new contract. Miami, of course, is in the early stages of a full rebuild, but Tunsil is young enough that it could be key to a part of the club when it returns to competitiveness. Plus, he's a player at a crucial position. So, I hate reading these articles, especially when first of all, we haven't played a down we have not played one down. No one has in one regular season. I know I'm going on a completely different tangent and not even addressing what I just read. Just hang on 1 second, because it does tick me off as a Dolphins fan to constantly read this. No one has played a down in the league yet. Not one team, okay? And to sit here and say that we're automatically bad is absolutely stupid. Okay, it honestly makes me very, very, very upset, because this roster is not as bad as everybody continues to say it is. I'm sorry that half the dang media, more than half of the media, who cover the NFL, doesn't spend enough time researching all the teams. They just look at the top teams, the bigger market teams. They either talk about how the big market teams are bad, or they talk about who made the best, who bought the most old big name free agents. That's all they talk about. And that to them equals success. They don't sit there and they don't look at each team's roster. They don't look at the good things that particular team did and the individual talent that team holds. They don't look at any of that. They just look at basically what fans look at. They don't study it hard enough, in my opinion. And I get that. Only, there's less hardcore fans than there is just layman fans who just go out, just want to watch their first take and just gobble that garbage up, and that's fine, dude. And I get that. And I understand how the machine works. You don't want to, the Dolphins are not a sexy team. There's not a Le'Veon Bell. There's not, an Antonio Brown. There's not a big personality on this team. There isn't a known commodity on this football team currently. That's fine, but that doesn't result in wins. Just having a big name on your team does not result in wins. And the fact that they're so presumptuous about that they'll sit here and look at a team like ours and just say we're going to be terrible. is absolutely ridiculous, man. It makes me very, very, very upset. If any organization knows, and any fan base knows more than any other fan base, that big names don't result in winning, it's us, dude. I mean, how many times have, in terms of the national media, like, oh, we won the, and I'm going to save this for the big topic because I have more to say about this, but we got to talk about Laremy Tunsil. I don't want to get off too far off the topic, but every time I read that, it makes me super upset because it's like, what are you basing that off of? Just what everybody else is saying? Just because one guy said this team has the worst roster because you can't name any of the players on the roster, that doesn't equal a bad roster. That just means you don't do your job right. So that's what upsets me. And again, and I want to say one more thing before we move on to Laremy, and I apologize because I know I need to stop. I need to stay on topic more. That's why in sports media, you literally hear, especially in the NFL, when you if you watch NFL Network, everyone has the same opinion on everything. It's honestly ridiculous, and that's why, dude. It's because they just go with, what is everybody talking about? What is everybody saying? I'm gonna agree with that. What is the obvious choice? And that's fine, dude. I'm not saying this roster is God. It's got all these great players on. I'm not saying that, but to sit here and say that we're like Cleveland Browns level bad is ridiculous. When we went 10-6 and went to the playoffs, we were the worst. ESPN had us like in the 30s, and we went to the playoffs. So it's just ridiculous, man. It just makes me upset, dude. All right, now Laremy Tunsil. This is great news that the Dolphins are going to extend him. Obviously, he deserves it. He's one of the best players, if not the best player on the team. He's a great player. Like, he's an outstandingly good player. He's an all-pro player. He got snubbed from the Pro Bowl. I think he allowed one sack last year at the left tackle position, okay? Which is ridiculous. I mean, Laremy is the best pass blocker in the National Football League, in my opinion. I don't think he gets much better than Laremy. So yeah, he clearly deserves it. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be burping all over the place right now. Excuse me. He clearly deserves it. I hope the Dolphins give it to him. I think we would all be happier if they did. And if you look at some of the bigger names that are getting money right now, like Taylor Lewan, Tyron Smith. Like, Tyron Smith, I guess, not now, but, in his prime, Tyron Smith was a better player than Laremy is right now. But right now, he's not better than Laremy. And Taylor Lewan is not better than Laremy. So, he might be a better all-around tackle in terms of probably a better, run game player than Laremy is. But he's definitely not a better pass blocker. So, if you don't know, mandatory minicamp was like 2 days long because they canceled the third day. If I'm not, somebody could correct me down in the comment section below, but I'm fairly certain that is the case. But Rashad Jones was there. That's the next news story that comes from Pro Football Rumors. Rashad Jones shows up for minicamp. He was there. Nothing really happened. He was just there. This next news story also comes from Pro Football Rumors. NFL suspends wide receiver Leonte Carroo. Free agent wide receiver Leonte Carroo has been suspended for the first 4 weeks of the 2019 season. So yeah, there you go. He's not even on the team anymore, but there you go. Is he? He's not on the team, is he? No, I don't think he is. This is a minor news story. Dolphins lose executive to Eagles. The Raiders' Dwayne Joseph forced the Eagles to reorganize their pro scouting department. Previous Joseph deputy Brandon Brown will replace Joseph as the team's pro scouting director. The Eagles hired Max Gruder to fill the Browns' former job, assistant of pro scouting. Gruder previously served as Dolphin scout. I don't know why that still is connected to us, because he wasn't even a part of the organization last year. Should have vetted that. I apologize. So let's get into the last two news stories before we get into the big topic of the day. These are really interesting and really cool. Basically, these are the highlights of mandatory minicamp. Now, if you missed the no-look pass from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Devontae Parker for the touchdown, then you're living under a rock. And also they highlighted, and this is just if you want to go check out on Dolphins.com, they currently have, or their Twitter, they have it on there too. Josh Rosen, and again, this pertains to the news story because this is just highlights from, in case you missed it. Josh Rosen also had two beautiful deep bombs in the rain. So if you guys want to go check out those videos, you can. Just a little taste of what we might be getting. Again, they're throwing in t-shirts and shorts, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. Let's see. Okay, so this next news story is basically a description of Ryan Fitzpatrick's stats and Josh Rosen's stats in one of the practices in mandatory minicamp. So it's really interesting stuff. This comes from the Miami Herald. So this is the second day of the Miami Dolphins 3-day. Again, this is from the Miami Herald. We're getting into it right now. This is the second day of the Miami Dolphins 3-day mandatory minicamp. And this is basically just details what happened. It's about 35 minutes into the human workout with Fitzpatrick taking the reins of the first team offense, which we're dubbing the Fitzpatricks, which it's pretty funny. His first pass is a 7-yard completion, and his second pass is a 10-yard completion. And by the time his initial team period is complete, the Dolphins' first team offense against the first team defense. Fitzpatrick has thrown 8 passes and completed 7 of them. So he's 7 for 8 in the first team period. Now Rosen gets his turn with the second team offense, now known as the Rosens, against Miami's second team defense. He also opens with consecutive completions, both for 4 yards. Then he throws 2 consecutive incompletions. And then the mistake. Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously trying to help his namesake quarterback teammate, beats a receiver to a spot, intercepts a Rosen throw. It will be the only interception either quarterback will throw all day, but it will matter. Sometimes when I read things, I feel like I'm saying it super serious. That was a joke when he said Minkah Fitzpatrick picked Josh. Obviously, he's just doing a job. And I find it interesting that they have Minkah on the first team and second team defense, which is weird. So continuing the day of the second day of mandatory minicamp, because Rosen will watch as Fitzpatrick takes his first snap in the next team period and completes a 70. So Ryan Fitzpatrick in the second team period completes a 74-yard touchdown throw to Devontae Parker. The Fitzpatrick celebrate, which is his team. This is kind of confusing. I can see how it would be, but hopefully you're with me. But the celebration ends with Minkah Fitzpatrick this time showing no regard for his allegiance to the Fitzpatricks, ending the drive by breaking up a third down pass. Fitzpatrick nonetheless completes 2 of 3 throws this series. Then Rosen's turn. Josh completes consecutive passes of 11 and 3 yards to start a modest rally, but then he simply misses a pass to tight end Nick O'Leary, who is running behind 2 defenders down the seam of the defense. A potential big play missed. Rosen gets hot the next series. He completes a 20-yard pass to Isaiah Ford. Then he connects on a 10-yard pass, then a 15-yard pass to Patrick I can never say that name. Laird? I don't know how you would say that name. And a 13-yard pass to Preston Williams. Good period for the Rosens. The problem is the Fitzpatricks have fate on their side this day. The next period, Fitzpatrick misses on 2 of his 3 attempts, including one that was batted at the line of scrimmage. But then he throws a deep pass to Devontae Parker that is tipped in the air and caught by cornerback. It was tipped in the air by cornerback Eric Rowe. Trenton Irwin snatches the tip ball out of the air. In case you don't know, he is a receiver. While running in stride and heads for the end zone, it's a 70-yard touchdown. So Ryan Fitzpatrick just threw another big play. The Rosens fight back in red zone work. Rosen completes 4 consecutive passes, including a 12-yard touchdown to Mark Walton and 2 consecutive 9-yard touchdown passes to tight end Clive Walford. While Fitzpatrick is better all over the field this practice, Rosen can find solace in being the most effective red zone passer. It couldn't have been better for the Rosens, except that Preston Williams dropped an apparent touchdown to end the red zone period. Then the Fitzpatricks assert their superiority. The quarterback, who had the upper hand in much of the offseason, throws a 65-yard touchdown to Parker. It's the 3rd long touchdown of the day. The Rosens have none. Both quarterbacks end the day with 3 touchdown passes, but obviously the Fitzpatricks have been more explosive and luckier with the tipped touchdown, of course. Rosen finishes the day completing 15 of 24 passes for 143 yards against the Dolphins' second-team defense. He throws 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, and his pass rating is a commendable 101.2. So just to repeat Rosen's stats in case you missed it, Rosen completed 15 of 24 passes for 143 yards. He threw for 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. His pass rating was 101.2. Now on to Ryan Fitzpatrick's stats for the day. The problem for Rosen is he's being compared to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Ryan Fitzpatrick on this day completed 21 of 28 passes for 350 yards. Fitzpatrick had 3 touchdowns of 70, 74, and 65, and doesn't throw an interception. Fitzpatrick's quarterback rating in team periods against the first-string Miami Dolphins defense is 152.4. He wins the day. So this is, I thought, before we get into my thoughts, I want to repeat Ryan's stats one more time. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 21 of 28 passes for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns of 65, 70, and 74 yards, and he did not throw 1 interception. So this is just a peek into why people are saying Ryan Fitzpatrick is beating Josh Rosen, is because of data like that. I mean, the man, other than the 170-yard touchdown, the other 2 were legit. Those were legit passes to receivers for long touchdowns, So the offense is definitely clicking more. Well, his offense is clicking more than Josh Rosen, even though that Josh Rosen beat Ryan Fitzpatrick. He threw 3 touchdowns in red zone drills. And he should have had 4 if Preston Williams didn't drop 1. So, what do you put more value into? I mean, that's up to you as the fans. But that's why people say Ryan Fitzpatrick is winning. Obviously, Josh had the interception that he threw to Minkah Fitzpatrick. Granted, Minkah Fitzpatrick, for some reason, ran with the second-team defense. He's going against lesser talent. He also was on the first-team defense, and he tipped a Ryan Fitzpatrick pass on 3rd down. So, however you want to look at it, there you go. I mean, that's just a peek into a practice there. So let's get into the last bit of news here, which is more highlights from minicamp. And this comes from the official side of the Miami Dolphins. So these are 16 highlights from Wednesday's minicamp practice. Again, 16 highlights from mandatory minicamp practice Wednesdays. Defensive back Minkah Fitzpatrick stepped in front of a pass intended for tight end Clive Walford to come up with an interception in team drills. Moving on to the next highlight. Quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick and wide receiver Devontae Parker connected on a 74-yard touchdown in team drills. Minkah Fitzpatrick later... Minkah Fitzpatrick later had a nice breakup on a pass intended for tight end Mike Gesicki. Minkah Fitzpatrick all over this so far. Next highlight. Every defensive player ran into the TNT wall after a short completion during team drills and again after the end of the period. So, I guess, there you go. Next highlight. Parker made a spectacular sideline catch where he stretched to keep his toes in bounds to snag a pass from Fitzpatrick in team drills. Next highlight. Wide receiver Trenton Irwin had a long touchdown catch off a pass that was tipped deep in the secondary on a play where Bobby McCain would have had a sack in a game situation. Next highlight. Linebacker Jerome Baker had a would-be sack in team drills. Next highlight. Rookie Preston Williams made a nice high catch over the middle. Okay, that's awesome. Next highlight. Quarterback Cornell Armstrong had a nice breakup pass in the corner of the end zone. Next highlight. Fitzpatrick had a 35-yard completion down the right middle in a team drill where the offense is backed up inside the 5. Next highlight. Fitzpatrick had another deep completion to Parker in a later team drill, this one down the left sideline. Next highlight. Rookie wide receiver Reese Horn had a nice diving catch on a pass by Josh Rosen. I think that was for a touchdown. Next highlight. Jason Sanders made a 46-yard field goal in the last play of an in-game team drill. Next highlight. Among players who did not participate in practice were cornerback Cordrea Tagley, Chase Allen, tight end Dwayne Allen, Kenny Stills, and wide receiver Bryce Butler. That was not a highlight. I don't know why they said that was a highlight. So that's your news, ladies and gentlemen, for the day. So some of those are repeat highlights that we detailed previously, but Minkah Fitzpatrick is all over that. Obviously, Preston Williams is having a tremendous offseason so far. Again, they're in t-shirt and shorts. Not that it really matters for receivers, but, you do get weighted down a little bit with pads on. Things slow down a little bit. But it'll be interesting to see if he can continue that with the game being a little bit more physical in preseason and in training camp or in the scrimmages, really. You don't really get to hit each other that much in training camp anymore. So we'll see how that all shakes up in preseason, really, and especially when he goes against different competition. It's going to be real interesting to see how Preston Williams and and see if he can continue his dominance. All right, the big topic for today, and I don't think I teased the fan Q&A at the beginning of the show, but I guess it really doesn't matter. Before we get into the fan Q&A, I do want to do a big topic for today, and just talk about the ridiculousness of everybody assuming the Bills and Jets are that much better than us. And I feel like I've talked about this in previous episodes, but I want to talk just for a second. Just think about this for a second. The Jets roster, the only reason they consider the Jets that much better than us, obviously they got Quinnen Williams. First of all, they got Quinnen Williams, all right? They have Leonard Williams. They still really don't have an edge rusher, right? Unless I'm forgetting someone. C.J. Mosley is not a great. He is definitely a scheme fit. He does not fit Greg Williams' defense at all. He is a thumper. If anytime the Ravens were in a situation where C.J. Mosley had to cover anybody, it was bad news. Bad news bears. C.J. Mosley is not a very good middle linebacker in today's game. If he was in 2005, yeah, he would be a great middle linebacker, but anytime he was put in those situations, he's not. Now, when he's blitzing and he's doing, he's in the running game, all that stuff, he's very, very good at. But in coverage, he's not very good. He got way, 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 way overpaid. He's not even a top 5 middle linebacker in the NFL. And it's not even close. He's not a very good all-around middle linebacker. And then you go to Le'Veon Bell. The only one that's going to be a really big difference. I mean, obviously Le'Veon Bell is going to be very good, but Quinnen Williams is a good player, but he's an interior rusher, and if our offensive line is that bad inside, then okay. But he's a rookie defensive tackle, so unless he's Reggie White, then I'm completely wrong. But yeah, and you look at the roster, it's like, well, their offense is not that great. Their best player on offense is the running back, and in today's game, that's not a good thing. And then you look at the receivers; they have no one out there who's a threat. I know Jamison Crowder. Everybody wants to talk about. Who cares? He's Jamison Crowder. He's a good slot player, but he's not he's not even a top 5 slot player. Robbie Anderson's not he's a good deep threat, but he's very one-dimensional. Jermaine Kearse, he's a good possession receiver. He's very similar to Jamison Crowder. Like, he's nothing special. He's like run-of-the-mill possession guy. Good. He's a good run after the catch player. It's the best thing he does. Their offensive line isn't great, and it just blows my mind that people are like, yeah, the Jets are that much better. People are talking about the Jets like they're a fringe 6th seed, okay? Or I've heard people say they are, like, I hear if you watch PFT or NFL Network or anything like that, they're so high on them because they have someone who they have Le'Veon Bell, basically. That's the only thing that's changed from the roster drastically. That and Quinnen Williams, but the roster doesn't scare me at all. They're a very, very beatable team. Very beatable team. You look at the Bills, and hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody, but I don't think I am. If you look at the Bills, their big free agent acquisitions, on the offensive side at least, were John Brown, and this is in terms of skill positions, John Brown, Cole Beasley. They lost Charles Clay. They still have Zay Jones, but there's no one in that receiving group that scares me. Cole Beasley is a inside the numbers possession slot receiver. What does Josh Allen not do very well? The intermediate passing game. Unless he significantly improves from last year, how the heck are they going to successfully utilize someone like that? That's the one thing their quarterback sucks at. Right? He's a very much a backyard quarterback who throws deep and runs around. That's what he did his rookie year. If anytime he had to be in the pocket and make a read, for God's sakes, that's when he was bad. That's when he wasn't at his best. And even in college, he wasn't good at the short passing game. If you were there or watched the home game we had against the Bills last year, that's a perfect example of Josh Allen's significant inconsistencies with his accuracy. In the red zone, he completely missed Zay Jones. If you remember that, he literally sailed a ball that was like 10 yards from him to Zay Jones, for God's sakes. Like, I just don't understand the hype. Listen, the only thing that the Bills have is a very, very good defense. Their offense is still very much run-heavy game and let our defense win it. That's very much what the Bills are. The Jets, I don't know, dude. Their secondary is not very good. The only one that's is a good player is Jamal Adams. He's a good cover guy. He's a very good box player. But their corners aren't very good. They have Tremaine Johnson and Perry Nickerson, who they drafted a few years back, but there's nothing there that's like significantly better than anything that we have, for God's sakes. And that these are divisional games. That accounts for 4 games in the division. Okay. It is honest to God, and I'm gonna look this up before we move on, really quick, but because I want to make sure, because I know the Bills signed some offensive linemen. And I know the Jets got Colecchio Osimile. Yeah, and ask the Raiders how that did for them, how that worked out for them. They added 1 guard. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't scare me at all. Like, people want to sit here and act like these rosters are, like, insanely good, okay? I'm looking up the Bills' offseason really quick. So, just so I don't miss anybody. Alright, so here are their key acquisitions. Center Mitch Morris, wide receiver Cole Beasley, wide receiver John Brown, offensive tackle Ty Nishke, guard/center Spencer Long, guard Quentin Spain, guard John Feliciano, I think that's how you say his name, cornerback Kevin Johnson, running back Frank Gore, cornerback EJ Gaines, outside linebacker who's been on the team, Lorenzo Alexander. What there is like, and then obviously, they drafted Ed Oliver and Cody Ford, and running back Devin Singletary, which are their notable. Ed Oliver, and again, I had questions about Ed Oliver in terms of his consistency. So did the Dolphins. You know what I mean? Like, there's no one there. Like, it's not a drastically different roster, dude. Seriously, their defense is good. Now, if they just run the ball and it's they win ugly week in and week out, I could see them doing that on a consistent basis. But other than that, I don't see how they're going to be significantly better. And I'm not looking up the Jets because I already know what the heck they did. And I just wanted to make sure I'm not missing anything super important to the Bills because I felt like I did. I'm not. So, like, that to me, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, it's how ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is that? This is in our division, ladies and gentlemen. And we're supposed to be the basement dwellers. Are you kidding me, dude? And that's the obstacles we have to overcome, and we're supposed to tank for 2 years? Are you kidding me? No, but these teams are ready to compete now. Because they have big names like Le'Veon Bell and LaShawn McCoy, who's been a part of losing ever since he's gotten there. Oh, but we're supposed to take a back seat. Okay. Yeah, because that makes a lot of sense. It's ridiculous, dude. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's get into the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. If we can beat the Patriots at home in 2017 with that roster, then we can beat we could beat any team. Or well, not any. I don't mean any team in the NFL. I mean any team. Let me rephrase that. We could beat any team in our division twice, other than maybe New England. But to sit here and think that the Jets and the Bills are going to be our crapping stepdads of the and just punch us in the face like it's nothing. It's absolutely ridiculous, dude. All right, let's get into hopefully we can answer all the questions. I didn't take too much time, but we have 22 questions this week. And you know what? Can we give ourselves a round of applause? Because we have been killing it with the views, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's the first month in the history of this channel that... I don't mean to move the mic around as much. It's the first month in the history of this channel that we averaged over 2,000 views an episode, which is real growth, ladies and gentlemen. So I feel like, thank you guys for that. That's awesome. And we did it obviously together. I make the videos, you watch them. And then obviously hopefully something good comes out of that. So let's get into the first question, ladies and gentlemen. The first question comes from the Apollo touchdown. He says, does Cordrea Tankersley have a future with the team, playing consistently often? Yeah, I mean, he would have to be to get significant playing time, he would have to get, beat out Eric Rowe. I don't see him doing that. He's a streaky player. I think he's a good special teams player. But yeah, I think so. The question is, does Cordrea have a future with the team, playing consistently and often? Yes, I would say so. This next question comes from Chad. He says, name a player on each side of the ball you think will break out this year. Thanks, Gags, for the cast. I look forward to it every Monday. Fins up. I really appreciate that, Chad. Pick a player. Ooh, that's a great question. Name a player on each side of the ball you think will break out this year. I think Mike Gesicki is going to, and I think I could pick a lot of players on offense, like Preston Williams. I feel like is going to too, but I'm gonna go with Mike because I feel like he's had a good offseason so far. He's from what I've been hearing, he's done well. He finished number 1 on the depth chart out of spring. I think he's the clear-cut favorite to win the starting job. I'm excited to see what Chad does with him and how he utilizes him, in his offense. Because obviously he had something similar in that when, he did red zone work with Gronk when he was there. He was the red zone coordinator in New England. So he could figure out ways to use him in the most important zone, in the NFL, which is the red zone. So I'm excited, and I think Mike is going to have a very good season for us. And on defense, oh man, I like Jonathan Woodard, but I gotta see more from him. Minkah doesn't count because everybody knows I love Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he's the best player on our defense right now. Who's gonna break out? I mean, X is obviously one of the best players in the league. Who's breaking out? I'm not gonna. I gotta pick someone who's been here. There's a lot of people on our defense that are just established, but it's hard to pick between. I'm really thinking about this. I'm gonna go with Jerome Baker, because as Dolphins fans we know who he is, but I feel like he's gonna break out on the national stage. And be recognized as one of the better linebackers in the AFC. I feel like he's going to have a really, really good season. I think he's going to be one of the first linebackers that is literally used in so many different ways. I feel like he could be a trendsetter within the scheme. Because we're going to ask him to do a lot, dude. Cover slot receivers. He's going to be an outside linebacker at times. Like, we're going to ask him to do a lot. And I feel like he's gonna succeed. This next question comes from Jay. He says, JJAE. He says, do you think it would have worked out if Amendola stayed in Miami since we have O'Shea? Again, let me repeat the question. He says, did you think it would have worked out if Amendola stayed in Miami if we had Chad O'Shea? So did I think would it work out if we had Chad, if Danny stayed? Danny definitely suffered from bad quarterback play. Many times he was missed. He just didn't get the ball on time a lot of the time. The timing was off and the quarterbacks were just not hitting him when they should have hit him. So it really hurt his run after the catch opportunities, and that's really what he excelled at in New England is, catching a 5-yard pass and making it, going for 11. Just because if you hit him on time, he has so much space between that he has created between him and the corner that he can turn upfield, and that's what he's done. And that's a great slot receiver, and that's what he's done his entire career. There was a lot of times where he just didn't get the ball on time, and And there was some times where he's just not the same player he used to be. So I feel like it was time to move on, because he would be taking up a lot of space for players that he's not better than at this point in his career. Like, the people that are behind him and that would be playing his position are better than he is. Like Jakeem Grant and Albert Wilson, they're just better players. So I think it was time to move on, and I think it would have worked out differently if we had it's to be determined. If we have better quarterback play this year, I don't think it has necessarily to do with Chad, but we cannot. I mean, the level of quarterback play we had last year was the reason he failed. But I don't think so. I feel like it was time to move on. I don't want to see what he would have done with Chad. I think I'm more excited to see what the players than what we have. But I feel like it wasn't scheme. It was definitely the quarterback play was the reason he wasn't as successful. All right, let's get into the next question. That was a great question, though. This next question comes from T-Zone. He says, dude, I'm off today. He says, hey, Skaggs, thanks a lot. He says, thanks a lot. Man, it's times like this I appreciate the work you and TD friends talk. Do know football for a while, but no on this channel again. Thanks for always keeping it interesting. He says, I can see us keeping 7 receivers on the 53-man roster. The first 4 are clear-cut when we have Ford, Williams, Butler, Horn, and Irvin. Your thoughts on which 3 will make the roster? Out of those guys. Excuse my pug. I'm sorry about that. He'll stop here in a second. It's hard for me to think with him doing that, though. 4 players are clear-cut. So Preston Williams is definitely making the roster. And he's going to see significant playing time. I really do believe that. Isaiah Ford is definitely going to make the roster. Bryce Butler, Horn, and Irvin, I feel like is a toss-up. And I really couldn't tell you. But Isaiah Ford is making the roster. He's had a good offseason so far. And I feel like, when you look at his play at Virginia Tech, he was impressive. He's a classic New England style player that it completely fits the scheme in his game. So I think that's why he's having a good offseason. So I'm excited to see what he does too. All right. Moving on from that question. That was a great question, T-Zone, by the way, and I appreciate the nice comments. This next question comes from SM. He says, if we lose Rashad Jones, there are 3 teams I see in the running: Oakland, New England, and Baltimore. Forget draft picks. Which team would offer us the best offensive lineman or defensive lineman? Same needs we had pre-draft, LOL. I disagree. I disagree. Yes, we couldn't address all of those needs. I never thought we would. And unfortunately, there was a run on offensive linemen at the end of the first round, into the first, and then into the second. All of the good offensive linemen were taken. Whether that was with trade-ups or just people not wanting to move down because they wanted those particular players. There's no way the Dolphins would have gotten them for a good price. They would have really have to overvalue one of those players and really be sure that those players are great. So I don't think that has anything to do with the Dolphins not being able to. I feel like that was just unfortunate circumstances. So you're saying if we trade Rashad Jones to one of these 3 teams, Oakland, New England, we're not trading them to New England. I don't think New England they have 2 good safeties already. They have actually 4 good safeties on their team right now. Oakland and Baltimore. I could see Baltimore, I guess. I guess Oakland. I could see Carolina. But you're not getting a offensive lineman from one of those teams. They're not going to trade an asset like that for a safety. And a lot of those teams that you mentioned don't have good depth on the offensive line. So you're not going to get anything for them. And if you are going to get something for Rashad, it's really what you're getting in the trade. What you're getting out of that trade is to get out from under that contract, or you pay that contract and you're basically paying money for a high draft pick from one of those teams. But you're not getting a starting offensive lineman from any of those teams. And their backups aren't good enough. They're not good enough to be starters. I can't think of one. Baltimore has the best offensive line out of those 3 teams. But they don't have good depth, and neither does. And no team really has good enough depth to be like, okay, I'm picking that guy, to be a starter on the offensive line. So to me, it just doesn't work. It's a good question though, but it just doesn't work. This next question comes from SM. He says, Skaggs, if Ryan Fitzpatrick gets the Fins into the playoffs this year, Would you buy his jersey and give it away to a fan on the air? No, I don't think I would. But to give it to a fan on air, I think that would be pretty funny if we did that. Yeah, okay, I'll make this deal. If we make the playoffs and that happens, I would absolutely do that. If Ryan Fitzpatrick, I promise you, and you can save this clip because I definitely would do something like that. I would. This next question goes through Pete Martinez. That was also a great one by SM. This next question comes from Pete Martinez. He says, "Thank you for liking my question and breaking it down the way you did. A couple episodes ago, you're right on. Continue to be great. And play me in Madden. I see you got a PS4, bro. You don't want to see me in Madden. You don't want to step to this, bro. You don't want to walk down that alleyway. Dude. Because you're not going to come out the same. And that's your choice, dude. Pete, that's your choice. If you want to make it, that's fine. But you're not coming out the same. This next question comes from Alpha. He says, Skaggs, I've always been a big Rashad Jones fan. That said, with all this trade talk, I almost feel we have to do something, even if it's to get Minka to his starting spot. Thoughts? The way the organization looks at it is we have a strong safety on the books right now. Why are we playing Rashad Jones $13 million a year when he's in no man's land? He wasn't at voluntary workouts. He already got off to a terrible start with the new coaching staff. They just look at it like we don't need him. And I don't think I think you can't label it as a need for the Dolphins. And you're paying him $13 million. Is he better than TJ McDonald? 1,000%. 1,000%. But TJ McDonald is a starter in the National Football League. He's a good strong safety. And he's getting paid less money, and you're paying Rashad Jones $13 million. Who's also giving you a headache, by the way. You know, Chris Greer does not have a good relationship with him. The stuff that went down last year. So I think that all of that is leading him to be traded eventually. What was the exact question? Yeah, like you said, I almost feel we have to do something. Yes, but I don't think it's to get Minka a starting spot. I think it has to do with all those things that I mentioned. This next question comes from Douglas Ward. He says, Hey, Skaggs, if Josh Rosen throws 26 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, and we go 8-8, and while doing so blows 3 games, we should have 1 and 3 others with late-game comebacks. Do you think we have our quarterback of the future? I got to read that again. This, again, comes from Douglas Ward. He says, Hey, Skaggs, if Josh Rosen throws 26 touchdowns, 14 picks, okay, and we go 8-8, while doing so, blow 3 games we should have won, and 3 others with late-game comebacks. Do you think... Okay, but we win 3 others with late-game comebacks. Do you think we have our quarterback of the future? Yeah. Yes. If we go 8-8, he goes 26-14. He has 3 fourth-quarter comebacks, but he also should have won 3 games. Yeah, I feel like that's a good year for a second-year quarterback. And you see the thing you're doing, Douglas, is we blow 3 games. Are you saying he's throwing 3 picks to lose us those games? Because they would have to be super egregious. They would have to be David Fells against the Bills. Bad. You know, missing a wide open touchdown for the win, by the way. I'll never forget that. That still bothers me. Even though the game didn't really mean anything, but still, we should have won that game, and that would have kept the Bills out of the playoffs. Yeah, to answer your question, Douglas, yes. I feel like he would still be on the team and probably indefinitely be the future starter. Again, keep in mind, he also said he has 3 fourth-quarter game-winning drives, and he throws 26 touchdowns, so that's a pretty good year. This next question comes from Derry. He says, Hey, Skaggs, do you think the Dolphins will go with the 2-quarterback or 3-quarterback on their roster this year? 3, no, but definitely 2. Definitely 2. This next question, you're going to keep Jake Rudock? Like, who? No, you're not going to do that. This next question comes from Alpha. He says, Skaggs, if Fitzpatrick has us at 8-5 and in the playoffs, in the playoff hunt, do we have to roll with him or do we have to see what Rosen has and put him in? No, you stick with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Because if we were 8-5 in the midst of the season, to the finale of the year, and you change quarterbacks for no reason, and you're 8-5, the locker room turns on you. because then you know that the coach is not on the same page as you. Completely different page. You lose the locker room if you do that. So you can't do that. You can't do that. This next question comes from Sean Smith. So I would not change them to answer your question, Alpha. This next question comes from Sean Smith. He asks, so I feel like we have some strong starting cornerbacks, but I think we need one or two more solid number twos to prevent what happened to us last year when X got hurt. It really showed. Yeah, you're completely right about that. I mean, we have good guys. I mean, we have Cordrea, we have Jalen Davis, we have Walton or Mort. I can't remember his name. Morton. They're having good off season, so hopefully that translates. Because you're right, we do need that depth, and that is something to worry about. But I feel like those guys could, and Bobby too. So I feel like those guys could help a lot. And Minka, don't forget about that. Especially if Rashad Jones stays, like, I feel like we can fix that really easily, Sean. But I get what you're saying. That's something that is definitely something you got to keep your eye on. This next question comes from Ron. He says, what would you have done to make this draft better? I like Wilkins. I hate what we did in the 2nd and 5th rounds. I hate we got rid of a 4th rounder. The draft to me is relying on whether Rosen is the man or not. I completely disagree with you in terms of the 2nd round. The 5th round was a bit of a head scratcher. I would agree with that. But the 2nd round to me is perfect. People have to remember, teams they leapfrogged us to get great players. Cody Ford, okay? The tackle, Jawan Taylor, right? From Florida. I'm forgetting it. Hopefully I'm not forgetting his name, right? Greg Little from Ole Miss. All of those players traded up to get. All of them, right? The Dolphins had no... Chase Winovich was gone. There was no 2nd rounder that I'm like, that guy is going to have a better career than Josh Rosen. I am so happy the Dolphins did what they did. They did the right thing. Okay, whether he works out or not, it doesn't matter. He has a to not take that chance and say he goes to San Diego or New England, right? I feel like to not take that chance would be stupid. Or not San Diego, LA, I guess now, but I have a lot of, you guys know this. I have a lot of confidence in Josh. I feel like he is going to be the starter. I feel like he is going to be the franchise. I really do. He has everything that he needs to have. You know, I'm very confident in him. I hit the mic. I apologize. So I just disagree with you on that, Ron, but I definitely agree with you on the 5th round rounder. That was a head scratcher. It's a great question, though. This next question comes from Ryan Beast _50. He says, what would I have done to make it a better draft? I don't know, Ron. I actually like the draft a lot. This next question comes from Ryan Beast _50. He says, what do you think about Cordrea Tankersley? Like, if you were the coach, would you keep him on the roster or would you cut him? No, I would keep him. He's got potential. And he fits the man coverage scheme to a T, so hopefully we can get some of these in. This next question comes from Lewis Traps. He says, what's up, Skags? I hope you're enjoying your summer. I can't wait for the preseason to start so we can see some sort of live competition. With reports starting that Bobby McCain and Minkah Fitzpatrick playing multiple positions and having a variety of defensive schemes, the new acquisition of Cox at the fullback position, it seems like that we're going to have a variety of offensive schemes as well. What offensive schemes do you think we'll be running with these set of players? Will we bring back Wildcat? Your thoughts. Thanks again for all the updated info, Fins fam. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Lewis. Or Luis, or whatever, however how you want to. Okay, so there's a lot. First of all, we're going to be running a lot of I formation. That's just basically a fullback is the lead blocker for the running back. It's, you know, when they say I formation, it looks like a dotted I. You see the fullback in front of the running back. You know what I'm saying? You've seen it a million. I mean, throughout your lifetime, depending how long you've been watching football, you don't see it anymore, but you've seen it throughout your life. And if you watch New England, they run it a lot. So that you're going to see a lot of that. On defense, you're going to see a lot of defensive backs on the field at one time. I feel like you're going to see a lot of the defensive linemen, especially on third down, just standing up. Even Christian Wilkins, when he's playing defensive tackle, he will be standing up. You're going to see a lot of that. I think those are some of the things you'll see that are different. The other thing you'll see is the game plan will be completely different week in, week out. That's what New England is famous for. They just cater to whatever team they play that week, which is something that I've been wanting for a long time, because that is the way to play. So I think that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I cannot wait to see you guys in the next one.